Dyer's Daily. So, if you've been listening over the last few months, I have been doing a playlist called Disney100 every Tuesday and Thursday for the last few months, which originally was going to stretch for 100 episodes. And recently, I kind of had a little bit of a sort out over things, and I realized that it was perhaps a harder undertaking than I had originally understood it to be. Because when I started, I thought, yeah, okay, I can record sort of several at once, and that will get several weeks over and done with. But then I realized that I have to fill in the gaps in between, and if I leave any particular time between recording, you kind of get out and you forget what it is you've been talking about. And so you think, have I covered this before? Am I repeating myself? And it got more and more difficult. And eventually the Disney 100 idea went from being 100 to 50 and then eventually down to 40 when I realized that I could find new ways of working, and the only way that I could start to do that, to fit my schedule, to fit all the demands that I have, was to try and end some of these series that I've been doing on this podcast just a little bit early. Which is fine, because I will come back to a lot of these subjects at a later date, I'm sure. With the Disney thing, there were so many things that I had left to cover, which I'm sure I will cover in dribs and drabs when I feel like it over the next sort of 6 months or so. It got to a point with this podcast where I felt like it was on the verge of burnout, if I'm honest, where I was like, I just want to get to a certain number and then finish. Whereas I feel with the new ways and the new paths that I've made for myself, we can now just go on and on and on, way past anything. Because I get a lot out of doing this podcast. There's not particularly much going on inside it, really. It's always just been about what's on my mind, or speaking just off the top of my head and trying to put that into a coherent conversation without kind of rambling off in other directions through having it under 3 minutes each episode. And so far, I feel like most of the time I've succeeded. And so now we can look forward and do themed weeks and do other bits and pieces. And for the first time in a while, I'm actually excited about where this podcast goes.
Dyer's Daily.